Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming here and joining us today as we celebrate biological reality and say no to gender identity. As Phil just said, my name is Celine. Some of you may know me as Celine Against the Machine. I'm on the committee with Phil for the declaration. I'm also a member of the Women's Rights Network Australia, Guardians Australia, and the first proud Aussie member of Gays Against Groomers. Today's event is being held under the declaration, and what we believe in is pretty simple, yet it's become quite controversial. So we believe that there are two sexes, male and female. We say no to puberty blockers and wrong sex hormones for minors. We say no to enforced pronoun use and yes to free speech. And we say no to self-ID. Now, some of you might already know New South Wales is the only state that doesn't have self-ID in its legislation. That means in order for someone to change their birth certificate and other documentation to reflect the opposite sex, they have to go through, layman's terms, sex change. Alex Greenwich and his pals, the Greens and Labor, want to remove these barriers so anyone and anyone can identify as whatever they want, whenever they want. And all you need to do is look around the world at where self-ID has run rampant, and we can already see the danger that this has put women and children in. So if you agree with us and you haven't already, please sign our declaration. The QR code is right there. We've got some guest speakers today, but time permitting, I want to maybe open the floor up to any of you that want to say a few words. Please keep in mind that we might not share eye to eye on everything. We may have different views when it comes to different topics. However, we do share one common goal, and that is to defeat gender ideology and get back to a place of reality. So our first speaker today is the Libertarian candidate for Mayor of Sydney. He's going to be running up against Clover Moore in next week's election. His ex-handle is woke not welcome, so that says enough about what he believes in. Please welcome Shaun Masters.
Yay! Woo!
Thank you, Celine, and thank you all for being here. I must say from the outset, I'm going to keep it brief today, and I'll tell you why, because I've been on the campaign trail and I have been saying over Clover, over Clover, over Clover, over Clover to upwards of 300,000 people. So as a result, I've actually in the process of losing my voice. So I do apologise for that. So look, I'll start with a sort of personal story. When my partner was pregnant with our son, Tommy, now 3 years old, we went to the ultrasound technician and she said, the gender of your child is male. And I said, you mean the sex of my child is male? And she said, no, the gender of your child is male. And I said, no, the sex is male. She said, no, the gender. I said, no, the sex. She said, no, the gender. I said, no, the sex. At which point my partner is squeezing my hand, trying to keep the peace. But the point that I'm making is, it is absolutely crucial in these little day-to-day moments to make the point that biology matters. Now, I don't want to over-intellectualise things, but in the book Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and I always remember that by Alex and her Solzhenitsyn. Alexander Solzhenitsyn writes, so he explores the horrors of communism through the Gulag. But at the very end of the book, there's a very compelling moment where he reflects on the horrors of communism, and he places the blame squarely at the feet of the Russian people, who did not speak up when they had the chance. So right now, we are living through a critical moment in history where it is time to speak up, because if we don't, it will be too late. Now, the area that I want to explore is kind of where it all starts, which is trans kids. And I'll introduce that by way of saying that this is the T-shirt I've worn for you today, which reads, insert preferred virtue signal here. Because that kind of relates to what's happening. You've got, and I must say, quite a lot of the time you've got mothers who want to play the status game. And you've got a child who is just exploring. Say you've got a little boy, and he puts on a dress, as all children do. They just like to explore different roles. And when that little boy puts on a dress, what the mother does is say, do you like being a little girl? Do you like being a little girl? And all children are just honed to adult attention. So when that child sees more attention that he has seen in his entire life, and the question is, do you like being a little girl? What does the little boy do? Yes, I do, mummy. And like that, you've got a trans kid. That's what is happening right now. And it is evil. And I tell you why. I've done a lot of research on this. I've written articles about this. Now, there's a doctor called Kenneth Zucker, Canadian doctor, who researched gender-confused kids in the 80s. Hundreds of gender-confused kids. And he determined that under what is called the watchful waiting approach, 89% of those kids turn out to be normal, happy, healthy, gay adults. The rest, the vast majority of the rest, overcome their feelings of gender confusion through puberty. So it's an important point to make. It's an important point to make that puberty is the solution to, not the cause of, trans anxiety. And the vast majority of the rest is vanishingly small. In fact, 0.0183% of these kids turn out to be gender dysphoric, and that is the historical and research percentage, 0.0183%. So what we've got here is a situation where gay children are being fixed under what would be called a heteronormative approach, right? So in many ways, this movement is homophobic.
In all ways.
Yeah.
It's deeply
Yeah.
homophobic.
Right, the reason, and we got here because of horrific stories of, like, Alan Turing. We would have seen The Imitation Game, who, a gay guy who basically single-handedly won us the war, ended up being chemically castrated and killed himself. And society has said, well, we must never try and we must never do this again. But now that's being applied to trans kids who are just going through a moment, and we will always have feminine boys, and we will always have masculine girls, and there is nothing wrong with that. I might end there.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is the only politician who's had their maiden speech to Parliament be banned online. So safe to say he knows a thing or two about censorship. New South Wales Libertarian Member of Parliament, please welcome John Ruddock.
Thank you, Celine. So my name is John Ruddock, and I identify as a Fijian female para-Olympian. And now you may not accept my self-identity, and that's okay. I just ask you to be civil towards me, and in exchange for that, I will say that I do not want to impose my identity on you. I don't want to make your life uncomfortable with my new declared identity. And that is what is happening with, look, we accept, libertarians accept that for thousands of years, a very small number of people have wanted to cross-dress and adopt the identity of the gender they may not have been born with. It's mentioned in the Book of Moses, 3,500 years ago, that some people do this. Very small number, but they do. And as a libertarian, we say, live and let live, okay? And let's accept that people are different. And now, a couple of qualifications on that. We feel very strongly about treating transgender people with respect and civility, but we do make a distinction between transgender people and transgender activists. Activists who want to weaponise the law and who want to encourage it. And what Sean was just saying, people who may not be this way naturally, but they want to encourage it. So we are alarmed about transgender activism weaponising the law. We are also, as libertarians, we believe that society has arrived at this rule that once you're over the age of 18, you are a full adult, you can make your own decisions, and we support that. But the other side of that coin is if you're under the age of 18, without the parents' knowledge of that, we are deeply horrified by it. Now, what is happening here in the New South Wales Parliament before Christmas is we've got this bill coming up, which is going to be able to say anyone can declare whatever gender they want and they immediately get the rights of that gender. Just on the drop of a hat, there is no other evidence required. Now there are so many ramifications for this. We know it can't end well. Now they got through the conversion practices ban bill earlier this year by 1 or 2 votes. So it's going to get through the lower house, but Labor will come up with their own version. And it's going to be a real battle there in the upper house. But I believe it is a battle we can win. But I'll tell you one thing you should notice is the sponsors of this bill want as little publicity as possible. They don't want to alarm the public. The conversion practices bill went through in the dead of the night. And the Sydney Morning Herald didn't talk about it. The ABC didn't talk about it. Even some of the more mainstream elements of the media, they didn't talk about it. And I suspect they'll do the same thing here. So it's up to people like us, to activists, to tell the public what's happening. Most people will be alarmed to think that you can just declare that you're another gender just off the drop of your hat. Now let's imagine it does get through. What do we then do? Well, we try and repeal it. Okay, well that will require more members of Parliament who are good on this issue. But I'll give you another mechanism on how we could repeal it. And this is something that the Libertarian Party stands for. You might have heard of, around in America and a few other countries, they have a thing called citizens-initiated referendums. Now that means if you get, say, 5% of the entire state to sign a petition saying, look, we'd like to have a people's vote on this to introduce a new law. Now, because libertarians don't really believe we don't want more laws, we believe in something very similar to that. We believe in citizens-initiated repeal. So if the Parliament passes a law, and the people don't like it, and I believe 80 to 90% of people in New South Wales will not agree with this law, the Citizens Initiated Repeal would say, look, if we can get 5% of the population to sign a petition saying we want a people's vote, a plebiscite, a referendum, whatever you want to call it, on repealing an existing law, that is something that we do feel very strongly about. That will keep the politicians in check, not just on this bill, but on all laws. So Citizens Initiated Referendum is the way to go. But look, thank you so much for coming along. Thank you to the organisers, Celine, Aidan and the gentleman who spoke first. It does take courage to come along to an event like this. I'm convinced most people agree with us, but we need to alert the public. So thank you very much for being here, and hopefully we can share it on social media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Just before we bring up our next speaker, I just have a statement that I got sent to me that was requested that I read out. It's from Karen, Anne and Paul, and they represent a group of concerned citizens. So here we go. So the increasing presence of self-identifying males in female-only spaces raise serious safety and privacy concerns, particularly where fetishistic behaviour is involved. Women, especially vulnerable women in places like domestic violence shelters, should not have to worry about whether individuals in those spaces are there due to genuine gender dysphoria or sexually motivated interests. The risk of predatory behaviour in these situations is very real, and the current self-identification laws, which allow anyone to access female spaces with minimal oversight, can be exploited by individuals with harmful intentions. Women are facing psychological coercion, where they are expected to validate and accept these individuals in intimate spaces, even when it conflicts with their sense of safety and dignity. This forced acceptance disregards women's rights to consent and leaves them feeling dehumanised. The legal system has failed to keep up with these concerns, leading to an ethical disconnect between the protection of transgender rights and the real-world impact on women. This is a pressing need for legal reform that tightens the criteria for access to female-only spaces, particularly in sensitive environments, while ensuring that women's boundaries and safety is respected. At the core, this issue reflects broader misogyny, with many women viewing the demand for access to female spaces as another form of male entitlement. Women make up more than half the population, and their need for safety, privacy and respect should not be compromised to accommodate the desires of a small group, even when these desires are potentially harmful. In conclusion, women's rights to privacy, safety and dignity in female-only spaces should be paramount. The government should enact legal reforms to protect these spaces for biological females while providing gender-neutral alternatives where appropriate. Gender identity must not be allowed to overwrite the biological reality of sex, especially in spaces designed to protect women's safety and autonomy. So thank you again to Karen, Anne and Paul for this statement. Next up, we've got a friend of mine. She's an absolute powerhouse, and she's going to tell you exactly why this New South Wales Equality Bill needs to be just absolutely dismantled. So please welcome Kat Carina.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Anderson Carina, and I stand here to advocate for equality for all. That's why I oppose the misleadingly named Equality Bill. While this bill claims to promote equality, in reality it creates a system where some people are more equal than others. This proposed Equality Bill fails to protect or enhance the rights of citizens of New South Wales, particularly children. It privileges a select few at the expense of the many. Instead of upholding our basic human rights, it undermines them. Far from reducing discrimination, this bill systematically increases the vulnerability of women and children to malviolence and exploitation for commercial gain. Firstly, this bill proposes to shift our legal norms away from recognising biological sex, fundamental for ensuring fairness and safety, towards embracing subjective, unproven concepts of gender identity. There's a lot to say about that, but let me explain in straightforward terms what this bill introduces and its consequences in 10 simple points. 1. Self-identification and access to women's spaces. Any man can pay a fee, likely around $125 based on other states, and by selecting female on a change of birth certificate form, gain access to female-only spaces like girls' changing rooms, toilets, sports teams and hospital wards, etc. This opens the door to exploitation as sexual predators or opportunists can take advantage of male privileges to oppress, abuse and exploit women and children. If anyone challenges this, they risk being sued for significant damages. 2. Falsification of statistical data. By removing original sex markers, male and female, from birth certificates, we lose the integrity of vital statistical data that informs public policy and research. 3, undermining parental oversight. This bill removes parental oversight concerning the mental and physical care of their child. Ideologically captured, government-controlled organisations such as schools, mainstream media, and it's also reflected in social media, will be able to encourage vulnerable children to legalise an opposite sex identity, further pushing them down the harmful path of social and medical transitioning. This is state harm to children. This is state overreach. 4, impact on faith-based schools. This bill removes exemption provisions for faith-based schools, preventing them from upholding and teaching their beliefs. This aligns with organisations like the Australian Human Rights Commission, Equality Australia and ACON to impose the Yogyakarta Principles +10, which they had part in writing by the way, into all aspects of our society. These principles were rejected by the Federal Senate and UN member states, but are being pushed through by bureaucratic means, bypassing democracy and through law. Our society is poorer for homogenisation of our culture. 5, prostitution and increased violence. Full deregulation of prostitute has seen in countries just across the ditch, like New Zealand, has always led to higher homicide rates among prostitutes. Removing protections enables pimps to exert more control over prostituted persons, increasing their exploitation. 6, pay attention to this. Sex work as a protected attribute. By protecting sex work as a special category, the bill prioritises the interests of the sex industry over the safety and dignity of trafficked and exploited women. Is Greenwich protecting people or profits? This also allows sexual solicitation to occur outside of schools, churches, mosques, and other religious organisations. Now really listen closely to this. It also allows any to engage in public sex acts inside and outside schools, churches, hospitals, parks, and all public places, inside and out. Pause on that and consider that carefully, because most people are missing it because they just got buried amongst crap. 7. Sorry? I can't hear you.
Tilt the mic down. Because they're struggling to hear us.
Okay. 7, silencing survivors of domestic abuse. This bill makes it illegal to out someone as a domestic abuser if they identify with any of the 85 plus different gender identities, silencing women who have legitimate safety concerns for themselves and their children. 8, compromising privacy in intimate searches. It would allow males who identify as women to search or be searched by women in intimate situations, including disabled, elderly, or hospitalized people, male and female. Female police officers would also be required to conduct intimate searches on males as suspects or prisoners who identify as women. 9, reverse discrimination in employment. This bill creates special categories, special classes, based on gender identity in employment, promoting reverse discrimination and undermining merit-based hiring practices. 10, surrogacy and human trafficking. Hold on, tick. The bill removes current bans on overseas commercial surrogacy, encouraging the commodification of vulnerable women as wombs for rent and children as commodities. It's actually illegal in Australian Commonwealth law, but this bill seeks to introduce it into state law, bypassing federal law. Commercial surrogacy is considered human trafficking by the European Union, yet this bill promotes it. Surrogacy has dangerous consequences such as permanent injuries or deaths of surrogate mothers, often poor women in countries like Georgia, Thailand, and India. It commodifies babies. And when unwanted children, such as girls, when boys are preferred, are identified in the womb, they are often aborted, regardless of the woman's feelings about that. Or if born with a defect, abandoned, like with the case of baby Gammy in Thailand, abandoned by an Australian couple. Multiple embryo implants, which is a typical process of the IVF process, often result in spare babies, who can then be trafficked, sold to wealthy parents, best case scenario, or worse, fall into the hands of pedophile rings, slavery, or organ removal industry. This gives you a broad picture of the bill. Please visit www.bill-breakdown.com to better understand it. I wrote it for MPs, but I've also tried to make it simple for general public. And see the rebuttals to Greenwich, Equality Australia, and Gender Centre and ACON. Understand this. By prioritising self-identification and subjective concepts of gender, this bill fails to consider the medical, societal, ethical, and practical implications. And though I've focused on the impact on women and children, this bill affects us all. Our human rights under international conventions include freedom of association, the right to associate with whom we please and not associate with others if we choose. This bill removes that. Freedom of speech, this bill constrains it. The right to safety, privacy, and dignity. This bill strips these rights from women, the elderly, the disabled, law enforcement officers, children, and same-sex attracted people. The right to fairness and safety in sports. This bill eradicates that. We have the right to equality for all, not privilege for a few at the expense of everyone else, especially women, children, and the LGBT community. Any legislative changes must preserve protections based on biological realities, uphold privacy and safety rights, and ensure that all citizens of New South Wales are represented and protected equally. We must stand for fairness and equality and push back against Greenwich and the gender lobby's efforts to reverse decades of progress in sex equality and sexual orientation. Push back against the erosion of our basic freedoms, fairness, dignity, privacy, and safety. Yes. We must defy the lie of calling privilege exploitation and harm. Equality, no. At Active Watch for Waiting, that's our group, our research shows that this bill reflects international financial and political interests rather than the needs and desires of the Australian people. All our rights matter. Women's, men's, children's, parents, law enforcement officers, LGBT and trans rights, all are human rights. And none of these should be compromised, privileged, or diminished by this bill. I urge you to take action now. Go to our parliamentary petition at www.tinyurl.com/ban-the-bill. Got posters over there and here. And sign it. And if you've already signed it, you are awesome. Now go and get 3 more people to sign it. Once we reach 20,000 verified signatures, this bill must be debated on the floor. Okay? And again, to learn more about the bill, please visit www.bill-breakdown.com. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Kat. All right. Oh, good. Alrighty. Next up, we've got a special interstate guest who I'm very excited about. He's an absolute legend. He's got quite the presence down in Victoria. He holds regular workshops and rallies weekly. He's also the creator of the organisation LeaveOurKidsAlone.org. That's kids with a Z. Please welcome Craig Cole.
Probably won't need that. The foghorn voice works well, but
Thanks very much, Celine, for putting this on, and the crew. Give them another round of applause, guys. Because it does take courage to put these things on. Because as we know, the radical far left, the woke cheer squad, try to shut everything down out of fear and control. We know they do this. So the more they try and shut us down, the more we're going to organise. So a bit about my background, and I know you guys, what I'm going to mention here today, I know you guys know a lot of this. But hopefully there's a lot of people watching the live streams that are going on, and the information I give you here today can help grow your knowledge, so then you're more confident when you're having these conversations out in the community, to try and get people who are aware of the situation to then start taking action. Before I leave you here today, I'll finish off on what you can be doing to take action. Now, for the last 18 years, I've worked in the community, helping youth, one-on-one mentoring and running life skills programs. I've worked in the education system for 15 years in Victoria, 10 of those years on an education department contract. I know how broken and disgusting the system is in Victoria, and I hazard a guess that it's the same nationwide. And we've had enough. Now, a few examples of what's been happening in Victoria the last few years. And I could stand here till next Sunday rattling them off. We have, but I won't for obvious reasons, but we have in the school system. Now, Bernie Finn, Victorian parliamentarian, got up in Victorian Parliament and spoke about this issue 2 years ago, of a homework sheet that 10-year-olds, that's 10-year-old girls, were asked to go home and ask their fathers about their erections and their ejaculations. 10-year-old girls. Grade prep students at a school out in the Far East. Bugger it. Emerald Primary School. Sue me. I don't give a damn. I don't care anymore. The gloves are off. I got nothing anyway. Convent took care of that, like the rest of us. Emerald Primary School showed a group of grade prep students, grade prep, under a banner called Feeling Safe Together and Diversity and Inclusion, which we know is a lie, which we know is a Trojan horse, showed pictures of genitalia to grade prep students and asked to name them. At one of the rallies we had down in Melbourne, a father came up to me and said afterwards, Craig, my 8-year-old daughter, come home and said, Dad, I can't look at you the same anymore, because today at school they taught us that when you go to sleep, your penis gets hard and wet stuff comes out. 2 8-year-old girls. And I could go on and on and on. You've heard about the situation in Renmark High School, where 14-year-old girls, and these are not isolated incidents. Please be crystal clear on this. They are not isolated incidents, where Headspace, a grooming organisation that are part of the woke, progressive, far left, far radical left agenda, who have activist facilitators working for them. A couple of these activist facilitators had a group of 14-year-old girls teaching them about the LGBTQ plus and what each letter stood for. And when they got to the plus, they said that included bestiality and incest. And they were described in detail. This is what's happening in the school system. You have activist teachers grooming your children. Now, if you say that's a bit of a stretch, it's not. Research the Institute of Public Affairs, the IPA. They've got full reports on this activism in schools. And the situation's worse, getting worse. I know, I've seen it myself. I've overheard it myself in the school system. They did the same thing with climate change, confusing and putting fear into these young children's minds. You know, even recently, you may have heard the old libraries. Now, they're not just, they're increasing their attack. It's not just about the schools now, they're taking it out in the community, where in libraries in Victoria, they've all been issued with these rainbow toolkits, whereby now any young child that enters a library will be asked what their preferred pronouns are. Further indoctrination, further grooming. And believe me, libraries are full of these activist teachers that think it's okay to enforce their ideology onto your children. Because that's what's happening. They think they have a right to do so. They think that it is their belief. You take on my ideology, or you're a bigot and you're a homophobe. And that's what they're using. Well, we've had enough, haven't we? There's, if you go onto the Victorian Government website, they openly flaunt it now. There's a site called the Rainbow Ready Roadmap, where they're going to roll out this indoctrination, and you can clearly see their strategy. It's lined, resources. Roll out this strategy to rural children in Victoria now. So you can bet the same thing will happen here in New South Wales as well too. All these links that I'm stating here today, they're off a few websites, and I'll get to those in a minute. We have now, in this country, depression and anxiety rates in children at an all-time high. And a big part of that reason is because of the indoctrination and the propaganda into this radicalised gender theory these children are taught. Make no mistake, they are trying to force adult content, adult ideologies into young children's impressionable minds. And we heard the gentleman speak before, how easily it's done. Because you're getting activist grooming teachers. If a child, a male child, wants to do some things that are considered what a young girl would do, they're automatically groomed and say, oh, you want to be a girl, do you? Now that sounds fanciful, but that is what is happening. And these woke activist teachers and principals, believe me, they will look to your face, smile, and lie straight to you. They will. Do not believe a word they say. Even the so-called conservative teachers who are too scared to speak up, they will lie to you as well too, to try and save their own backs. And this is where we're living. I mean, all this is clear and blatant child abuse, as we know. Please, as I finish up, a few more, just bear with me. Have a look at websites called leaveourkidsalone.org, kids with a Z. Have a look at websites called indefenseofchildren.org, aww.org.au. Another one, guardiansaustralia.com.au. There's 4 you can look at for now. It's got a whole host of information on there, what you can do. So arm yourself with knowledge so that then you can have that confidence and courage to have those conversations out in the community and not be shut down with the default response from the radical far left of, oh, you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, oh, that's just a sign of the times now. Says who? A very small percentage of the population. Have a look at the Australian Bureau of Statistics figures on the percentage of the population that identifies as LGBTQ+. Very small. We are the majority, and we are about to get really loud and vocal on this and throw it right back in their faces, because we are not accepting this for 1 minute longer.
Well said, brother.
There's if you go onto the Leave Our Kids Alone website, also the In Defence of Children, what you can do as parents, send an email off to the school quoting Article 18, Section 4 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the end of it says that your children's education must be in conformity with your religious and moral convictions. It's in black and white. So when the woke activist teachers teach this stuff, they are against your wishes, they are in breach of the ICCPR. The ICCPR has been scheduled and codified into the Australian Human Rights Commission Act 1986, a federal act. So that means if they are in breach of the ICCPR, they are in breach of federal legislation. Let's start throwing that at them and start to make them real nervous. Also, throw at them a term called vicarious liability, whereby if you teach my child anything, any content that they suffer mental health issues from down the track, I'm holding you, teacher, personally liable, and teachers can be personally, civilly litigated against. So let's start throwing that back at them as well too, and their smug attitudes. Go to your local school council meetings. Demand to see the full content. Demand that this is not, you are not as parents accepting this radicalised gender theory to be taught in schools. And let's call it for what it is. Let's start naming it a radicalised gender theory, because that's what it is. Because any theory that leads to children mutilating their bodies is a radicalised theory. Let's not pull any punches about this. Demand your lesson plans. Don't accept all the contents on the website. That's not good enough. You as a teacher, according to state legislation, must supply me with the full content of what you are teaching my child. Now, every teacher needs to have their lesson plans fully submitted before the start of each term. I know that for a fact, and if they're not doing that, they're being negligent in their job. So ask for those. Also, speak to other parents. Form little groups. Form little action groups. There's flyers that can be printed out. There's some flyers over there. Come and take those. We've got a flyer off the Leave Our Kids Alone website. You can download that as well too. I think In Defence of Children has a flyer you can download as well too. Take those to school drop-offs. Start handing them out. Start having conversations. Don't be afraid of being called a bigot, a homophobe. I'd rather be called a bigot and a homophobe than grooming young, innocent children with your sick, twisted ideologies. And if you think, before I finish up, and thanks for your patience, if you think you don't have children at school and this doesn't affect you, it does. Millions and millions of dollars are spent on education around the country. That's your taxes. So even though you may not have children at school anymore, or they're homeschooled, or you've pulled them out, your taxes are funding radicalised gender theory being taught in school. Sit on that and process that for a while. Are you happy about that? I know you're not, but we've got to get really not angry, but really stern and focused on this issue. And to finish up, this is no longer about diversity, inclusion and acceptance. This is about demands, intimidation, indoctrination and propaganda. You must use my pronouns, otherwise you're a bigot. You must let me teach your children radicalised gender theory, otherwise you're a bigot. You must let me sexually indoctrinate your child, otherwise you're a bigot. You must not misgender me, otherwise I'll take steps so you can lose your job. This is not about live and let live anymore. This is about live and let us rule. The us being the woke, radical, far left, who are cowards, mind you. So if we keep putting pressure on them, they will crumble. Because the majority have had enough. Stop grooming our children. You do you. If you want to jump around on a pogo stick and identify as a jumping tree, more power to you. Stop indoctrinating our children with this. You do you, we'll do us, because we are the majority and we have had enough. Stop grooming our children. Stop demanding we accept your radical ideologies. and get the hell out of our school system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. That was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to point out that not all trans people are against what we're here for today. I'd like to thank Dana for turning up and risking. It's a bit of a risk to turn up. You don't know who is going to be here. But thank you very much for turning up. My grandfather was a transvestite, and he used to dress up and play the piano and sing to the Sydney Push. This was Barry Humphries, Germaine Greer, all of that mob. And he would be horrified to see what's going on. He got paid for it, right? He got paid to sing and play the piano, dressed up as a woman. And he would be absolutely horrified to see what's going on. I was an ex-teacher. Oh, I am an ex-teacher. But I also taught at the University of New South Wales. And if you think this is restricted to primary schools and high schools, it's not. The university is full of it. Full of it. I taught in the School of Medical Sciences, and the amount of medical students who were identifying as medical students, that's what they were, they paid their medicine fees, but they believed in radical trans ideology. So how can you do that and then be trusted as a doctor? I'm not sure. Anyway, to wind up, I'd like to introduce Celine again. There'll be some time for some questions and some answers. Put your hands together for Celine Against the Machine.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. So it occurred to me recently that I've never explained my handle publicly before, why my name is Celine Against the Machine. Obviously, it's a play on words and it rhymes. Rage Against the Machine aren't my favourite band. And I do find it quite ironic how many punk bands have fallen to the establishment these days. Apparently it's now punk to say and do everything that the government tells you, so we saw that coming. But yeah, guess what? Okay, yeah. But as for the machine that I'm up against, in order to tell you that, I'm going to tell you who I'm here for. So I'm here for the women before me who fought so very hard for our rights. The rights we are seeing being stripped away from our very eyes. The right to same-sex spaces, the right to same-sex care for elderly or disabled women in a hospital or nursing home, the right to play sport against other women. I'm here for the women that have been fighting this bullshit for years, who saw through it since day one. I'm sorry I couldn't join you sooner, but I'm here now. I'm here for the men who stand by us in this fight, like you lovely gentlemen here today. The men who know this is wrong, and instead of just laughing at it, they're willing to stand up and protect women and children. I'm here for the good men. I'm here for the lesbians who can't even meet in public or private anymore, who've had their dating apps taken over by pigs in wigs. Pigs in wigs, yes, pigs in wigs. Women have the right to be in a same-sex relationship without being called a bigot for not accepting girl dick. It's insane. Also, quick shout out to Carol Ann and the Lesbian Action Group down in Melbourne who are fighting the Human Rights Commission at the moment for the right to exclude men from a lesbian space. It's nuts, it's nuts. Men can never, ever be lesbians. I'm here for the gay men. That's the homosexuals, not the queers. The gay men that are fed up with the perversion that we're seeing at Pride, the ones that are being used as a shield by fetishists and sadomasochists to further this sick, twisted agenda that has nothing to do with the original LGBT movements. I'm here for the bisexuals. The true bisexuals who understand to their very core that there's only two sexes. It's in the name. I'm here for the bisexuals that are being erased in the favour of the much more accepting pansexual, which to me just sounds like an affiliation for cookery. I'm here for the young girls, the quirky girls, the girls who felt like they'll never fit in, the girls just like me, the girls that spend hours of their day scrolling through Tumblr or TikTok, romanticising feelings of dread and hopelessness as a coping mechanism. The girls who self-harm, the girls that self-exclude. The girls who hate their bodies and want nothing more than to leave them. The tomboys, the masculine girls that are being made to feel like they're boys. The girls whose minds and bodies we are destroying in the name of this ideology. I'm here for the young boys who are told day in and day out that their very existence is toxic and that everything that they inherently feel is horrible and rotten. The boys who don't fit in with their peers, the boys who don't fit the mold. The boys who are exposed to violent pornography at such a young age that it rots their brains, leaving them incapable of navigating a real relationship. The feminine boys that are being made to feel like they're girls. The boys whose minds and bodies we are destroying in the name of this ideology. I'm here for the trans widows, the women who watch their decades-long marriages crumble at the hands of a paraphilia. The women who watch their husbands try on their clothes, their makeup, their underwear. The women who are shamed for not wanting to be in a lesbian relationship, to live inside a fetish because the man that they love so dearly has gone and become a carbon copy of herself. The women who are silenced while those men are put on a pedestal, celebrated. How stunning and brave to destroy your family. I'm here for the children. I'm here for the children being forced to call their dad's mum and their mum's dad. The children that are being used as pawns in an adult delusion. I'm here for the Transhausen children. You know the ones. These are the children whose parents decide when they're infants, babies, that they're born in the wrong body. The Jazz Jennings of the world. The children that are being lied to every single day by their parents. The adults that they trust the most. The ones who don't have a choice. The ones who are stuck. On the flip side of that, I'm here for the ROGD parents. The parents who have lost their children to the gender cult. The parents who have had their children placed into state custody, all because they refuse to affirm their child's gender identity. The parents who are grieving. The parents who feel like they'll be ostracized from their community for believing that their children are perfect just the way they are. The parents who choose the truth. The parents who stand up and the parents who fight for their children. I'm here for the brave Australian women who are being taken to courts and tribunals and human rights commissions, putting their lives on hold for daring to speak about the barbaric practices going on and the impacts that it's having on women and children, for daring to question this new reality. I'm here for Jasmine Sussex. I'm here for Louise Elliott. I'm here for Moira Deeming. I'm here for Angie Jones. I'm here for Kira Lee Smith. I'm here for Gillian Spencer. And I'm here for Sal Grover. I'm sorry if I missed anyone. I'm sure there's probably other cases. For you see, gender ideology has no boundaries, as it seeks to destroy the boundaries that hold our society together. It doesn't care who it hurts in the process. As long as the message of love and acceptance is constantly shoved down our throats, it can get away with unspeakable atrocities. It is a new breed of religion, one that we've never seen before. One without a messiah, but with a doctrine just as polarising. The WPATH standards of care is one of the most medically negligent ideological models I've ever read in my life. And I say that as a former nurse. And even after all the proof has come out about how fucked up these physicians are and the experimental procedures they are performing on minors and vulnerable adults, nothing has changed in this country. We are still plundering headfirst into this Marxist hellscape where up is down and down is up and 2 + 2 = 5, and biological reality ceases to exist. The Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne still cites WPATH as a reputable source, which all of our gender clinics follow. And don't even get me started on ACON and the ties that they have in this country. I am living for the day I see ACON be shut down. The people pushing this ideology are cogs in a machine that's been working overtime to infiltrate our society, corrupt the minds of children, and to destroy our humanity. We have a long way to go in this country, but I have faith in Australia, I have faith in its people, and I have faith in our future. So I'm Celine, and I'm against that machine. You seem very stable. You seem very stable, sir. You seem okay. I'm positive that the... Oi!
Stay out, stay out.
There's always one, isn't there? Fuck me. There's always one.
We're going to have a Q&A session now, if anyone's got any questions or...
I was going to see if... Oh, Ed, did you want to say a few words? But we'll get back or... Yeah? Yeah. Thank you so much. now. Sorry, I just got to get I was like, I was still there. Sorry about that.
Once a jolly swagman camped upon a billabong under the shade of a coolabah tree. Come on, my freedom fighters, just stand around and let him go, let him run away. That's it. Let him go. He's not worth it. He's not worth the energy. This is where the energy is, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get together. You know, there's a lot of broken souls out there. There's a lot of broken souls. And we've allowed it, sadly. Our bureaucrats. But we can fix it. I have no doubt we can fix it. And there's going to be a lot of healing because there's been a lot of pain that's been spilt. So if he wants to join us, he can. We just love him for who he is. You know, he's hurting like all of us. He might even have something to say if it's constructive. Yeah. But here we have, what's your name? And we have Denise who'd like to share a few words.
I'm a member of the Women's Rights Network Australia, and if I say anything or admit anything I shouldn't, you can just tell me. It won't be very long. But of course, we put in a submission to oppose the Equality Bill, which was quite comprehensive, and I'm very thankful to speak to that.
Thank you. Thank you.